one of the things that I've always said for a long time of if I'm designing an expo booth for IAAPA, I want the nicest carpet pad, which which sounds so weird unless you've walked into a booth that has the nicest carpet pad. Well, I, I don't think my budget was able to get the nicest carpet pad, but it definitely wasn't the cheapest. And people commented on it. People noticed when they walked into the booth that they felt a little bit like you're walking onto a cloud.
Every year, millions of attraction visitors lose hours in line instead of making memories.
Since its inception, accesso's virtual queuing has saved more than 4.5 billion, yes, that is billion with a B, minutes of wait time, freeing guests to pack their day with more rides, eats, and excitement.
The result? Happier guests who spend more and a better bottom line for you.
Ready to turn waits into wins? Visit accesso.com/ROI clinic.
The queues are virtual. The results are real.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great, but how are you?
I am fan-IAAPA-tastic.
You threw in IAAPA in the middle of fantastic.
I did.
That's a lot of A's. Because we already say that there's a lot of A's when you stretch out fantastic.
Yes.
And then IAAPA already has three more A's. So could you be IAAPA? Then
I'm sure I could.
we would exceed our limit. We'd have to pay extra for that.
I'm sure we'd have to pay some sort of royalty on the A's for that one. But I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Many people consider the holiday time as the most wonderful time of the year. But I think you and I, and maybe 40,000 other people may think that there's another week of the year that is the most wonderful time of the year. What would that be?
Well, let's see. I mean, yeah, there's the holiday time. There's, 4th of July week. It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
There's like the spring holiday week. Those are good too. But I would have to say the week before Thanksgiving. And I think if you look on LinkedIn and on social media, I find myself singing along to many people posting it's the most wonderful time of the year, ... with a picture of the Orange County Convention Center in the background.
Absolutely. It is IAAPA North America time. We can't exclude the other expos around the world. We can't just say IAAPA is Orlando the week before Thanksgiving, but that's when so many people come together. We have a great time. We do a meetup. It truly is an opportunity to get together with friends, to meet new people, to have a wonderful time. And you and I have some takeaways. We've done this before where we kind of encapsulate our experience at IAAPA. And I've got a couple things. You've got a couple of things. Is there anything like big picture that you want to share about your experience before we kind of jump into this?
Yeah, IAAPA Expo is awesome. It is so hard to describe to people who are not in this industry that I'm not going to a boring conference and I'm not going to like a consumer driven like Comic-Con. It is so business driven, but it is fun. It is exciting. You talked about meeting new people and connecting with old people. It's like a family reunion that might play into one of the takeaways that I have. So a little foreshadow into this episode. And it's just it's so fulfilling. It's the most exhausting week of the year, and we all know that. We did our IAAPA our Thrival guide and our episode with that. And most people said, wear comfortable shoes, pace yourself, take care of your body, take care of yourself. And when you do that, you can have just one of the most productive from a business standpoint, as well as enjoyable from a, I don't know, life fulfillment. I know this sounds just like esoteric, but you and I have both been going for many, many years, and we gained so much value from it. I know I had a great show. I imagine you had such a great show as well. And it's just one of the things too is it's such a great reminder of why we do what we do. And I'm always hit with that energy always in the opening ceremony, the very beginning, where sometimes it's one video that encapsulates everything. This year, there was live entertainment that was peppered through it, and not gonna lie, some of it felt a little emotional in all the best of ways. Of like, this is it. This is why we're here this week, and this is why we've chosen this career path, and this is where we fit in the world.
Absolutely. I
Step
did
up
not.
my soapbox for a second.
That's that's great. I did not to get to go to the opening ceremony this year because I had a education session scheduled opposite that. But I can't remember the last time I went and I didn't have. It wasn't dusty in the room. I had a little tear up in my eye. Sometimes it's the Give Kids the World video that they play, but just the whole, and I'm getting goosebumps right now. But the whole environment and vibe, and I'll call it soul fulfilling experience of the entire week that we could probably do multiple episodes of our takeaways. We'll condense it down to one. Just because of, to your point, there's business takeaways, there's personal takeaways, there's things that we learn, things that I never would have thought of before that now I can take away. And maybe it wasn't a personal business connection, but something I learned in a session or I learned by talking to someone that now I can incorporate that into what I do. And that makes me a better human. That makes me hopefully a better business person.
100%. So, love hearing these overarching takeaways, but that makes me really excited to hear what some of your more specific, more targeted key takeaways are. Like you mentioned, you've got some, I've got some. You want to kick it off with your first takeaway from IAAPA Expo 2025?
I will, and it's one word: people. This was such a huge people experience for me. I think what it was the fact that from our meetup on Sunday night until basically I left Epic Universe Thursday night, I was talking to people. There were people coming up to me. I was going up to people. Yes, I've been in the industry for 100 years, so I know a lot of people, but new people coming up saying, hey, we're connected on LinkedIn. I just wanted to say hello. Or somebody coming up to me after a session or walking through the halls and seeing somebody I haven't seen in however long, and you drop everything, you run up to them, you give them a big hug. Like, that was the soul fulfilling experience for me that I had throughout the entire experience of the expo. Our event, I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming to that because it was amazing. That was one of those things where I'm glad at the very beginning you suggested we get a little food because neither one of us was going to have an opportunity to eat. And it went by like that. The event it was 2 hours, but it was like, whew, so fast. But it was because of the people that were there. Like, this had very little to do with what we were doing, but just reacting to and interacting with people, and just that whole vibe I think was great. So I wanted to thank everybody for being there for that. I also wanted to point out one specific person. His name is Robert Boskin, and he's from the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk Company out in Santa Cruz, California. And he came to our event, and I've known him for many years. But he came to our event, and the first thing he said to me was, I'm a little nervous. He goes, this is not my cup of tea. I do not voluntarily go to networking events. But at the end, and later on when I saw him throughout the week, he says, I made new contacts at your event. I got out of my shell. I overcame a fear. Like, that was not our main intent, but certainly excited that that happened for him. And I'm sure he's not the only one. I'm sure that there's other people that came to the event, interacted with people that they weren't expecting to meet. And, it was I don't want to say life changing, but it was a positive experience for them. So the people part of it was super, super important. And what I also loved about the opportunity that I had at the expo was that there's so many people that I've talked to over the years that are nervous about presenting or nervous about X, Y, and Z about the expo. And it was great to kind of be, and I don't want this to sound boastful, but like the almost the elder statesman, right? Like I've been around for a while, so now I'm very fulfilled in helping the next generation of people come up. So there were so many sessions that I had on my calendar. Most of them I didn't get to because I was having all these other conversations, but of people that were presenting maybe for the first time. And I just wanted to go and support, or, finding out that people had done something different that they'd never done before and wanting to be there to, just lend a word of encouragement. To me, that was as much about the expo experience as anything. So that's my first one, people.
That's awesome. I have so many. I mean, you went down so many avenues there, and I'm trying to break down kind of my response to each of it. I think the first thing you mentioned was from Sunday night through the end of Thursday night, you were always talking to people, and I felt the same way. And I anticipated that a little bit and made sure I had my throat lozenges
Yeah.
ready to go. I was popping them proactively. Anytime I would feel a little bit of a tingle, I've shared on the podcast before. I lost my voice a couple years ago on stage on Monday, the very beginning of the expo, and I never want to have that experience again. So I was drinking tea every single morning for my Airbnb. I didn't even buy coffee. I had coffee at my booth. We know that, but I got my tea. I got my honey. Like I'm protecting my voice so that I can constantly have all those conversations. We talk about at the meetup, right? I anticipated we probably weren't going to come within 10 feet of the buffet, and I don't think I don't think I did. Everyone said the food was great, and I'm like, oh. Good. I'm so glad the food was great. Glad that we were able to eat a little bit beforehand because yeah, the second that it started, it was constant. I would say it was just so joyful to see people who many of whom we get to see once a year, sometimes maybe even a little bit less than that. I was so excited by so many of the people that I got to see that I wasn't sure if they were going to be there or not. And then right, seeing them, walk up the stairs, and we had the opportunity this year to thank everybody. And one of the things that I said was, I recognize it's the Sunday night of IAAPA Expo. There's so many options every night, every day, all day, every day. There are so many options, and I echo just your sentiment of gratitude for everyone who came because we really don't take for granted that out of all the things that they could have been doing, that they chose to come to the Attraction Pros meetup. And in some cases, if they were nervous to walk into a room like that and not know what to expect. And I hope that we created a comfortable environment to be able to have that. We weren't dressed business formal. It wasn't a stuffy white glove event. It was come as you are, and everyone came as they were. Some of them were more dressed up than others. We never set a formal dress code. We were able to hear the band playing from downstairs, and it was just a casual, fun, amazing way to kick off the week in what I think was just an exciting and comfortable setting. You talk about throughout the week all the sessions that you attended as well in support of so many other people. And yes, I think in all the best ways, you are one of the elder statesmen, your words, not mine, where you are focused on fostering the growth and the potential of, I'd say, the future leaders of the industry and those who are presenting at IAAPA. Yeah, public speaking is terrifying, especially at the very beginning, if you don't have that much experience and you don't know what to expect and you're afraid of all the possible contingencies of what might happen. And in one of my sessions, my mic went out right in the very I like was culminating up to this kind of like climactic ending and like final line of what I was saying, and halfway through that my microphone cut out, but I leaned into it and I said, I just spoke louder and then said, wow, that was a very anticlimactic way to end the session. And everybody laughed. So we were all part of it together. It wasn't, oh no, here's a a tech glitch that happened, but it was just, hey, that's just part of it, and we're all on the same team. And I think what you do by doing it, by helping people on stage and just being in those sessions and talking to them after, I think is just such an amazing feeling of support that those individuals get.
Well, thank you. Thank you. One other thing I wanted to add to that was that as I reflected on the week, probably the phrase that I said most was, "Hey, do you know?" Like,
Mm.
Josh, do you know Mark? Mark, do you know Lisa? And connecting people that way, I think that was a super fun part of the experience.
I love doing that. There have been times where I've been in conversation with someone and it's like, oh, I do want to talk to that person, but I don't want to wrap up this conversation. So I make that connection.
Yep.
There have been a number of times where I've introduced myself out of the conversation, where they immediately start talking. And then I realize, oh, I- I'm not part of this anymore. And then I just turn around and go like, in all the best of ways. Great. They know each other.
Yes.
They're now, best friends forever from that. And now I can go chat with somebody else and not feel like I'm interrupting anybody or kind of having that hard transition out of a conversation, which could be a networking challenge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was the first one that I had was all about people. What's your first one?
All right. We're going to go down to the trade show floor here.
Love it.
I believe that an expo booth, particularly at IAAPA Expo, because that's the context of what we're talking about,
Yep.
an expo booth should operate like a mini attraction.
I'll love it.
So, as many people know, I had a booth this year for my business, Liebman Leisure Group. I was in the first time exhibitors pavilion, but don't be fooled. This was my 19th IAAPA Expo. This was my 10th time exhibiting. And most comically, this was my second time in the first time exhibitors pavilion. But it was so nice to have so many people welcome me to IAAPA Expo for the first time.
Congratulations on your new business.
Thank you. Exactly. I embraced that with warmth and gratitude. And another thing too is I knew that I would have some sessions throughout the week that would take me away from the booth, and because I've exhibited many times, I know the rules. Your booth has to be attended at all times. I also knew that I would be in meetings throughout the week. That was why I got the booth space so that I could hold my meetings in a designated spot where I wouldn't have to scramble to find a place. So that would take me away from the opportunity to speak to people as they were walking up, kind of have those casual, spontaneous encounters of people walking through the show floor. So because of that, I created a Liebman Leisure Group IAAPA Expo internship. And I had two incredible interns, Amanda and Jaden. They both go to the University of Central Florida. They're studying hospitality at the Rosen College. They're working in theme parks. They're pursuing a career in attractions and events. And both of them enthusiastically raised their hand when I put the call out for interns. And in speaking with them before the show, along with kind of wrapping my head around, okay, what is this booth going to look like? They both have experience, in hospitality, working for Disney, working for Universal. So we talked about kind of the way that we present ourselves at the booth and said, this is whether it's an attraction, whether it's a hospitality environment, we want to bring all of those principles into this 200 square foot rectangle on the show floor. And so we talked about, the basics of guest service, of just kind of being presentable. And, of course, they, adapted to that immediately of just having, been working in the industry of just things like greeting the guest first and thinking about the 10-5 rule and making eye contact and anticipating needs and asking specific questions from guests so that, from the attendees of the show who are our guests when they were in or near the booth, and really wanting to create an experience that I know I cannot replicate an attraction experience, nor would I strive to even come close to that. But if I can have my little corner of the universe right here where you say, hey, it's comfortable. I feel a little bit more relaxed than I do at the expo. I feel happy. I feel warmly greeted while I'm here. So things like when we eat lunch, we're not eating lunch in the booth. We're not eating in front of our guests. Yeah, we got some quick snacks. Yeah, we've got water. Yeah, we're serving coffee. That's another thing. I had a coffee maker. That was my giveaway. not the coffee maker, but the coffee. I'm not giving you a USB drive or something you're going to shove into a drawer. I'm giving you something of I know a lot of people need while on the expo floor was a cup of coffee, and I got branded coffee cups, and we even talked about. So for those watching on YouTube, I've got my Starbucks cup right here with my festive kind of red and green piece of it. But we talked about where the lid needs to be placed based on where the hole of the lid is to make sure that when people are walking around that they were able to see the company logo from that. And it got a lot of really good feedback. And I was even gifted some additional coffee types from Nespresso types. So I have to give a shout out to my mentee, Quinn O'Leary, who showed up with a bag of Nespresso. And you know what? Some people asked for decaf, and I didn't have that initially. But yeah, now wait a minute, I've got regular decaf. I have sweet vanilla decaf from that, thanks to Quinn surprising me with that. I was so appreciative of that. She also gave me a piece of track from the Wild One at Six Flags America that just closed. So I had that on display at the booth as well. But we tried to create this environment that said, okay, this is a little bit different than okay, here's the trade show floor. You're walking into something where at least for a couple of minutes you can feel something else. One of the things that I've always said for a long time of if I'm designing an expo booth for IAAPA, I want the nicest carpet pad, which which sounds so weird unless you've walked into a booth that has the nicest carpet pad. Well, I, I don't think my budget was able to get the nicest carpet pad, but it definitely wasn't the cheapest. And people commented on it. People noticed when they walked into the booth that they felt a little bit like you're walking onto a cloud. And knowing that, wearing comfortable shoes and that your feet hurt, that takes you away. That takes you off the show floor and into something of saying, "Oh, this genuinely feels nicer." I had furniture at the booth as well that really emulated not just an office environment, not just okay, here's a table and chairs so we can sit down and talk, but I rented furniture through through GES, IAPA's or even just the convention center's kind of preferred partner, where it was a nice comfortable couch. Definitely learned a lot from designing my booth of okay, here's some notes for next year. The couch was way too big. There was a couch, there were two chairs, a coffee table, and a side table. I had to have them take away one of the chairs because it just didn't fit in the booth. So now I've got this like 6, maybe even 7 foot couch. It was a really big couch that for in some cases like 3 or 4 people were sitting on it at a time. So I was like, okay, I can get a smaller couch and another chair. So I made a lot of these kind of notes for how I can continually improve the experience, which is something I talk about a lot from an attraction standpoint. But a lot of people said how comfortable and how nice the furniture was, to the point where if there was nobody sitting in the furniture, I noticed one of two things happening throughout the week. One, particularly later in the week, a family, mom, dad, two small toddlers, came over, and my booth was very close to the mini melts booth, and they had their mini melts with them, and they saw that nobody was sitting down. They sat down and enjoyed their mini melts. And you know what I didn't do? Ask them to leave. I said, you know what? I don't have a meeting right now. Both Amanda and Jaden, they were out at another session. I was sitting I had another high top table. So I said, they can just enjoy that. And they did. And then the mom, wiped up afterwards and thanked me. But the other thing that happened as well is that people weren't sitting in the furniture. Some people thought that I was a furniture dealer, and they thought that this was the furniture that I was selling for them. That was I took it as a compliment on how nice the furniture was from that standpoint. So the overarching takeaway is I wanted to treat the expo booth like it was a mini attraction just within the environment that I was able to control.
Which I think is awesome. I love that attitude. I love that outlook. I love that mindset. Really quick, I know I saw your banner. It says Lieben Leisure Group right there. And if you have some really comfortable chairs, I could definitely see how people would think, oh, leisure. I'm going to sit down, right? So I could see people making that leap. But also, I love the detail that you thought of, which is what every attraction designer, every operator should be thinking about, those details that make a difference, especially the carpet, right? Because when you think about all the steps that people are taking throughout the week and they step into your booth and it's like, oh, now I'm in a cloud. Like this is different, right? So it's those little things that create the immersion that we're all thinking about how to create within our attractions. And of course, one of the things that I was thinking of when you mentioned that was edu sessions, right? And edu talks. Like we should be treating those as a show, as an entertainment offering at a theme park or on Broadway or wherever. Like we should be treating the audience as very very special. We should be ensuring that their experience is an amazing experience. And the one thing that bugs me, I guess, a little bit about some education sessions is and I will preface this by saying sometimes it's really good information, but when people are sitting up on the chairs and it's just a conversation between them and there isn't a lot of interaction and there isn't a lot of show and immersion for people in the audience, like that's just three people talking and I could be watching this on YouTube. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it's not an immersive experience, and that's where I think we can really up the ante both in trade show booths and in education sessions.
Now I'm firing on all cylinders of thinking of not just my booth for next year, but just this mindset of your edu session is a show. Your education session or education talk, whatever it is an experience for your attendees. That's what they will gain so much value from. And like you said, even if the content is gold, if it's
Yeah.
death by PowerPoint, oh man, then that's not
Yeah.
going to be nearly as enjoyable. So really emulating what we do in this industry and
Yeah.
giving and turning it right back on those who are doing it on a daily basis.
Well, and I'll give you a quick example before I get to my next
Yeah,
thing. With Scott Swenson and Heather Doggett, we did the Terrifying Leadership Experience,
yeah.
and we came out in masks. Like I had a mask, and I was like a Halloween Horror Nights character, and I was running around the room, and I was kind of scaring people and sitting down next to people. Heather had this creepy clown mask. Scott had a whole zip up thing that looked like a skeleton, and the funny thing was that I've never seen like in the opening bit of an education session is people had their phones out and they were recording us or taking pictures, and I would sit down next to somebody and they'd be recording me like this. Like that to me is an experience, right?
Yeah.
And ideally we'll see from the results if we back that up with our content, which the early feedback is that we did. But that experience, I think, really allowed people to get into the immersion of that particular session and that conversation. And I think it also led to some really great conversation that we might not have had otherwise.
And I've got to imagine anyone who attended that session, if they attended many others throughout the week, and if they were to ask, what was your most memorable education session? I, I don't even think it's fair. Almost in all the best of ways, that's got to be the top answer.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Well, I hope so too. I hope
Yeah.
so too.
All right.
So,
Let's hear yours.
um, speaking of an education session that was incredibly memorable for me, I got to go to a session on inclusion that was hosted by Sharon Newhart and Enzo Piscopo from Morgan's Wonderland. And they were talking about inclusion from a team member perspective. Now, one thing to know is that Enzo is in a wheelchair. And IAAPA had put a wheelchair lift in this particular room so that he could get up on stage. So he was up on stage, which in all the years that I've ever been to IAAPA, I think this is the first time I've ever seen someone in a wheelchair presenting on a stage in an education session. I could be wrong, but this is the first time I think I've seen it. And it was amazing to hear their insights. One of the things that they said was that inclusion is not the same as accessibility. So you can have your accessibility ramp, right? You can have your accommodations that you're making, but if you're not creating an inclusive environment or culture, people can still feel excluded even if you have a wheelchair ramp, right? So you may have the accessibility part of it, but it's also about how people interact with one another. They also said something really interesting about like going to like a sporting event or even in a theater environment. Enzo said, I don't get to pick my seat. This is something I never really thought of before. But when he goes to someplace, they've got the designated wheelchair areas, right? He can't go to a baseball game and say, "Hey, I want to sit behind home plate with my son." I can't, if I'm at Fenway, I can't sit behind the Green Monster, right? I'm only going to be able to sit in those designated seats. And when you think about how our industry is so big on personalization, and creating a memorable experience of exactly what that person wants to have happen, that can be a difficult challenge to overcome. Now, I don't have the answer, but I do think it was a really great perspective that I'd never really heard of before. The way they also, excuse me, tied this back to employees was that they said, and obviously there's a lot of different disabilities that people are dealing with, but the one that he mentioned, of course, was his experience being in a wheelchair. He said, when I go to a sporting event, when I go to an amusement park, when I go to a grocery store, I never know what to expect. So I am always in problem solving mode. I don't know what the parking is going to be like. I don't know what it's going to be like to maneuver around that particular store. Even if I read the website on all the accessibility advancements that a park has made, I really don't know what it's going to be like until I get there. So he said, we're always in problem solving mode. He said, we're going to figure it out, but our mind is always thinking, how are we going to solve this problem? And he said, when you're looking for an employee who can solve problems, and he said, what are your guest services folks doing? They're solving problems every single day, all day long. He said, think about people who deal with a disability in their life because they're solving problems every single day. They don't know again, what it's going to be like when you go into into a grocery store or a sporting event, but they're going to figure it out. It's the same thing with your guests, right? They don't know what that guest is going to say when they come up, but they're going to be able to figure it out. And I thought that was such a great mindset and great way to look at the team. But he also said that it was about, looking at, as we talk about the guest and employee experience, right? So many facilities have created great accommodations in the guest experience, but have we done the same thing in the employee experience? Think about your application process. Think about when you have, if you have an employment office, right? Is there a ramp getting up to the office, or is it just stairs, right? Or have you thought about every little touch point that someone might go through that has a disability from the application or from the employee perspective, just like you might have from the guest perspective? Because maybe you don't have as many employees with disabilities, but to Enzo's point, maybe you could expand your employment base by thinking about, hey, we've got these folks that could be great at problem solving, but we're not making it easy for them to apply. We're not making it, a pinch point free environment for them to actually be an employee with us. So I thought those were some amazing takeaways from that session on inclusion.
Agreed, 100%. I'm kind of like firing on a lot of cylinders here as far as kind of, directions to go. The first one you mentioned being always in problem solving mode. And if let's say they're at an attraction, they might also be looking for that team member who's in problem solving mode as well. And you said, what are guest services team members doing? They're in problem solving mode. I know that. I've been there. And I wonder too, we think of the concept of anticipating guests' needs of, okay, I know how to solve this problem. Now I need to make sure that the guest knows of that, balancing anticipating needs while also making sure we're not making assumptions as well. I know that this will help your experience, but I don't want to assume that you're looking for this type of accommodation. Maybe you're looking for something else altogether. And if I were to intervene, then that could come across as intrusive and really kind of walking that line and making sure that the guest knows that I'm trying to help you without trying to dictate your experience further when you already know that it's dictated or restricted to a certain component of, like, when you go to a sporting event, you don't get to pick your seat, to be able to say, okay, I want to offer the accommodation, but I don't want to assume that the guest needs the specific accommodation that we have.
Right.
That's one thing. The other piece of it is the team member accessibility component of it is a whole nother branch of the intersection of the guest and employee experience of, yes, okay, front of house needs to, meet the standards of the ADA Act of 1990. Does it check the box? Great. It checks the box. Okay. What about everything else? Does that not only check the box, but does it also create opportunities, like you said, to widen the applicant pool? Now going back to Enzo always being in problem solving mode, well, if someone who's hiring, that sounds like someone that they might want on their team to say, okay, we need to create the environment where somebody who is naturally always in problem solving mode is going to be great for the organization, is going to be great for the guests to be able to perhaps further anticipate needs than someone who does not have a disability and is not regularly thinking about solving these types of problems.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that it's just being in that mindset, because that is something that they're doing all the time, can only help in the workplace because we're always solving problems.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 All
Cool.
right, what's your next one?
Whew. Okay. You're gonna like this one.
I like the first one.
Yes, you're gonna genuinely appreciate this one. And does Linda listen to the podcast?
Sometimes.
Okay, she will appreciate this as well. So, I IAAPA Expo is so big. This year, it broke an attendance record. What was it? North of 44,000 people, I believe it was. Just amazing. So many people from all around the world. Like we mentioned earlier, you and I have been attending for so many years. We've met so many people, but we also know that we've only scratched the surface on the amount of people who attend this show. You never know who you're related to at the expo. So,
Yes, I'm gonna like this one.
I said, and Linda would too, because I
I
know
really
she's
will too.
really
Yes.
into lineage and ancestry and things like that. And so on Tuesday being the busiest day on the show floor, I was in meetings stacked all day. I was barely checking my phone, but I had I allocated like a quick break for lunch and looked at my phone, and I get a text from my mom, and she says, "We have a cousin exhibiting at IAAPA," and I'm like, I don't have the brain power or bandwidth to dive into that. I was like, this is so fascinating. And I'm like, okay, when I get a second, I need to respond to this and I need to find out who this is. And then at one point, I was in several meetings, and then I wasn't even talking to Amanda and Jaden that much if I was in meetings because I was really relying on them, and they did a phenomenal job of managing the walk up traffic. And at one point in between meetings, one of them said, "So Josh, someone came by and said that he's your cousin," and it was like, right. I got a text from my mom about this, and I don't have much more information. Who is he? And he came by again, and I was in a meeting again. I said, "This is so interesting. We gotta talk." And then finally, the next day, he came back, and it was perfect timing because it was right after my last meeting ended. And then, Amanda and Jada, they were both off in a session. Didn't have any meetings at the time, so I was like, "Come on in. Let me get you a cup of coffee. Sit down. Let's talk." I met my second cousin once removed, who has been in the industry. He's once removed, so he's the generation older, so he's kind
Uh-huh.
of like like my mom's age, basically. Been in the industry longer than I am. And this industry is so big, and we're so interconnected in so many different ways, but we also know there are so many different jobs within the industry. Uh, but we realize we do totally different things, but there is like a Venn diagram overlap. Uh, I'm not going to be able to sell this very well because I cannot fully describe what he does, but I want to say he's a chemist that has designed the formula that makes skin that wraps around animatronics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So not anybody that I would like walk up to that booth and be like, "Oh, like tell me about the form," like totally not in my wheelhouse at all.
Right.
He's talked about, some of the projects that he's worked on, and I'm like, "Well, I'm very familiar with those animatronics and those and these outdoor environments that the product is in." And we sat and talked for about 30, 45 minutes or so and made the connections of, all right, who are the family members who we are most closely connected to? How can we make sure to stay connected? And at one point, I looked at him and said, you and I have been inside this very building at the same time many, many, many times over the last 2 decades. The
Yes.
fact that we're just meeting right now is wild. But the overarching point is this expo is so big, you've probably got some relatives, whether distant or whether close, in that same building during that same week.
Well, and you're absolutely right that Linda wants to hear this story, and I'm sure that if you said, "Hey, here's my cousin's name, here's our information," she would be able to find the family tree and get everybody aligned and figure that all out. It's funny you mentioned that because I kind of forgotten about this experience, but the very first day that I walked into the convention center, Monday morning, I'm going to the registration desk, and someone says, "Matt?" And I looked over and it was somebody that I kind of recognized. And she's somebody that used to work with Linda. And so my first selfie that I took with that day was with, this person. Her name is Anne, who was volunteering at the registration desk. So, we exchanged some pleasantries. But it was just so cool because I never expected to see her. Like I expected to see, obviously you and Ron McKenzie and all these people, throughout the week. And here's this random person that I had no idea that I was going to run into. Now, we're not related like you and your cousin,
But still,
but
a close connection was unexpected.
yes, a close connection that was unexpected, which again, I think is one of the things that makes this particular experience so cool.
Hmm. So when people say IAPA Expo is a family reunion, sometimes it really is.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. Awesome.
All right,
Yeah.
let's hear your next one.
So my next one is actually a collection of quick hits. Okay. Um, so the first one was I attended the Women in the Industry luncheon. Now you might be saying, Matt, why are you attending the Women in Industry luncheon? Well, I had heard such great things about it last year, and there was only a couple of guys that went, and I think myself and Bernie Campbell were two of the four guys that showed up. But I wanted to go because diversity, inclusion, getting everybody's voice heard, that's super important to me. So being able to go and hear what that was all about, experience it for myself, I thought was really important. So I got to hear Lauren Hodges speak, and she spoke about managing your energy versus managing your time. So often people talk about, you got to manage your time, your to-do list, and all these different things that you have to do. Well, she showed a graphic of kind of your body rhythms, and that we're in sort of a like roughly a 120-minute cycle. You've got about 90 minutes or so that you're high energy, you can do things, and then about 20 or 30 minutes where your body really wants to rest or it wants to have some downtime. And there's this rhythm that your body goes through. And so this quick hit is really about understanding where your energy is so that you can, manage your tasks and manage the way that you go throughout your day in the best way possible. I used to talk about this when I would teach time management, and we would talk about your most creative time. If you're a morning person, try to get those creative things done in the morning. If your prime time is in the evening, then get your stuff done then. That's when your body is naturally in that mode to do those things. So that's number one, is to kind of manage your energy, not manage your time. The next thing comes from a gentleman named Jason who approached me after a session that I did on embracing the uncomfortable, and he really saw the dots connecting of uncomfortable things being things that we have to change or things that we're going through changes. And he was talking about how important words are, and he gave some examples. Like he said, instead of saying I can't speak at IAAPA, what if you said I don't speak at IAAPA yet? Or I haven't spoken at IAAPA. So by saying I can't, you're kind of putting yourself in the mindset of saying, I'm never going to do this. But if you say, well, I haven't done it yet, then it's an open possibility for the future. And one of the ways I reflected on that, speaking about the time also, is that, when there's things I see that I probably should be doing or I'd like to do, I might say to myself, well, I don't have time. Well, if I take Jason's lesson and say a little different, I haven't made the time yet. So it's just, he really wanted to kind of emphasize the importance of words and how they can change our mindset. So I thought that was really, really cool. Our good friend Tony Sanders really inspired me about this concept of appreciation. So, and I don't even know if he meant to, but I attended his session that he did on the great games culture. And he's so good at, kind of creating a usable and practical system that people can kind of work through to create better culture and to increase their employee engagement. And he made a comment, something like, well, you appreciate your team, right? And I took it in two different ways. Like there's the showing appreciation, like saying, hey, thank you, Josh, for doing what you do. But I also took it as there's a deeper meaning there of, do you actually appreciate them? Do you actually find value in what they do? And so I could say, yeah, Josh, thanks for being the co-host of the Attraction Pros podcast. But the deeper appreciation is, I really genuinely value what you bring. I value the fact that you have different connections in the industry. I value the fact that you think differently than I do so that we can have sometimes opposing, but often congruent conversations. But I also value the fact that you're really good at saying, hey, we need to schedule some people. So let's get on the horn and see if we can get some guests scheduled. I really appreciate, I truly value that. And the connection it made for me is, if you don't genuinely appreciate and value what people do, it becomes that much harder and less genuine to show the appreciation. And so that's something that has really got me thinking a lot. Like, do people really truly find the value in what other people do so that they can show the appreciation? So that was kind of a deeper dive on appreciation inspired by Tony. I've got two more quick ones. The next one is a very personal one, that sleep and rest are not the same thing. So I tried to get, a good night's sleep every night during IAAPA, but there was one morning when I was at breakfast and I was feeling really anxious. I felt like I hadn't had any rest, and I just had to take a deep breath. And I had to say, okay, let me go through my day. Let me think about. So I had to mentally think about resting, even though I had had sleep. So, like, that thought went into my head, like, sleep and rest may not be the same thing. Okay, so you can sleep and rest your body, but you also have to rest your mind. So that was my takeaway there. And then the last one, my last quick hit, I saw a lot of the IAAPA employees taking pictures, taking selfies. The convention center looked amazing. They were taking pictures with other people, like I was in pictures with Max and Will and Monica, the people that I interact with most. And it just dawned on me, like, thinking this is their workplace for this week, right? Is your workplace and work experience Instagrammable? We talked about that long time ago for facilities, like creating moments and creating spaces where people want to take those pictures and post them. Well, I saw the IAAPA crew in between all of the hard work they're doing. Let's not discount that. They were working very hard during the week. But in between that, they were also very proud of the event that they had created. And they wanted to remember that. Are we doing the same thing for our team members? Are we creating Instagrammable moments for a team where they are super proud of the work that they're doing and they genuinely want to share that with other people? So those are my quick hits.
All right, those are some good quick hits. Couple thoughts. I'll comment on a few of these here. The mindset piece of it reminds me of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in the first chapter, he talks about your identity determines your habit, and your mindset, you have the opportunity to control your identity. So if someone is trying to quit smoking, you could say, I am trying to quit smoking, or you could say, I am a non-smoker. And as a result, your habits then reflect that mindset that you've created, the identity of, I'd like to run a marathon. I am a marathon runner. I am a runner, right? Whatever that might be. I'm going to try to wake up early. I'm an early riser, right? Which then turns into the energy technology one. If that's where I get most of my creative energy. The appreciation piece. Thank you for all the nice things you said about me. And, and I'll also say that the specifics make it genuine. And it reminds me of a story that I've heard you share many times from your very first job of collecting shopping carts in a grocery store parking lot. And your manager told you exactly what he appreciated from you, not just thanks for the hard work, Matt, but thanks so much for, you can say it much better than I can, of the way that you make the shopping
Okay.
carts and the way that they're well organized. And what was it? We have to repaint so many fewer cars. It's saving us, so much, more money from that. There's always a shopping cart available and anybody needs it. Our revenue's going up from it. I think it was like all those things that, that
Yes,
get specific rather than just surface level appreciation. Um, and then is your workplace Instagrammable? Intersection of the guest and employee experience. For those IAAPA team members, not only is that their workplace for the week, but it's like this is their Super Bowl for the week. Like this is it, and it becomes it's what's really cool is that yes, it's the most memorable and exciting time of the year for us as attendees. We get to be a part of it. I can only imagine that's just exponentially greater for those who are a part of it on a daily basis who now are seeing it come to life.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you have one more?
I have one more.
Bring it.
The value of IAAPA Expo is, for the most part, intangible. The benefits that you get from it, yes, you can pay the admission to get in, and as a result, you get access to the show floor. You get to, you can, track how many education sessions you went to, and if I go to the reception, I can count how many business cards I got from it, and did I make sure to hit the bar a few times to get my monetary value from the ticket. But the overall value of IAAPA Expo is intangible and sometimes is not even realized until much later in the future. And I know this is something we've kind of talked about to an extent, of just there's the compounding value of networking, of just it will continue to grow and snowball with next year's expo, building on the foundations of what you built on this expo. But I'm looking at this through the lens of the internship program that I created this year through my interns Amanda and Jaden, of wanting to make sure that I was not simply offering an unpaid internship. So when I put together, here's what the compensation is, and I listed out the bullet points of, yes, you get, access to IAAPA Expo. You get the opportunity to attend education sessions. You get the opportunity to network. Okay, well, how do you quantify the opportunity to network? You get access to separately ticketed events. Okay, there's a dollar amount with that. There's some, tangible benefit of that. They could come in and they could buy a ticket to the show. They're students, so they had access to be able to do that and see the show floor, attend those events, kind of rack up the tangible benefits of kind of buying that ticket. But I wanted to really load it with as many intangible benefits as possible that they would realize, hopefully in the moment, but continue to realize, many years to come. So, for example, I had a couple dozen meetings throughout the week, which for me is actually a little bit on the lighter end, but I had so many sessions as well during trade show floor hours that kind of pulled me away. But that's still, 24, 25 meetings is still a good chunk of meetings. I made a point, I was very intentional to make sure that everyone who was coming up for a meeting, that whether it was Amanda, whether it was Jaden, or if it was both of them, that they got to meet whoever was coming to the booth and was able to say, like, they're at UCF, they're studying hospitality, they're working in the industry, they're pursuing this career type, and really not just saying like, they're interning for me for the week. And, yes, it said Liebman Leisure Group on their badge. It said intern on their badge, but it made a point of saying, wanting to make sure that they talk about themselves when they have the opportunity, not just talking about the business that they are supporting. And between that and between that and making sure that they came to the leadership breakfast on Wednesday, they both wanted to attend that. So being able to see Mark Woodbury as the keynote speaker and being able to talk to other people at the table, just any chance I had to be able to make those introductions. The fact that they hosted the welcome table on Sunday night for the Attraction Pros meetup, I said, yeah, yes, you're working the desk, but you're going to meet a lot of people right away, right out of the gate, who are some of them are a pretty big deal, and they're all
Yeah.
a pretty big deal in the industry,
Yeah.
I should say, and many of them in very big executive leadership roles. And at one point, one of them said, "I've lost count of how many executives I've met." Today. And I think that was like on Wednesday, let alone Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So when we think about that, and then now I'm even in contact with some other people who met them and say, hey, do you think they would be a good opportunity for XYZ? There was a lot of exchanging of business cards. Some people even came over and said, hey, we've got some potential career opportunities and growth. And I'm like, yes, like this was the compensation. Like this was what made it not just be an unpaid internship. And from having attended the expo for so many years and from building a very strong network within the industry, I feel like, okay, I've got the opportunity to offer something so much more than just your ticket to IAAPA Expo. And wanting to make sure that they gained not just the tangible, but also very much the intangible value of being there.
Well, don't look now, but you're becoming the less elderly statesman for these folks. But what I love about that is that, like you said, you're not just saying, "Hey, come help me with my booth so that I can go to the bathroom and I can go do my sessions,"
Yep.
right? You're saying this is going to be a valuable experience for you, and I could not agree more that the compounding value of coming to a show like IAAPA is largely intangible. I do know that there's people out there, of course, that they have to justify their trip, right? And they have to, deliver an ROI. Did you get, here's the flights and the hotel and all that kind of stuff. Did you bring back ideas that will either save us that much money or bring in that much money? And I totally get it. At the same time, that's also not taking into consideration the value that that person is getting probably from a personal perspective, from a network perspective, from a love of the industry perspective. Because I know as long as I've been doing this, and you can tell me if this happens to you too, like I love the industry even more now. Like I'm ready to go, even 10 times more than I was last year, because of that experience, because of the people, because of the opportunities that we have, because of the experiences, all of that. You put a little bow on that, and you say, "This is your IAPA experience," and you're like, "That is the gift that keeps on giving during the most wonderful time of the year."
Way to put a bow on that.
I'm so glad my mic didn't go out.
Yeah, right. And you wouldn't have the opportunity to just speak louder and have
That's
people.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So good stuff.
it is good stuff. It was such a great expo. I'm so excited for 2026. Um, Nervous, not gonna lie, and I know we're all saying it. The trade show floor is expanding by 50%. We're nervous for all the right reasons. Uh,
Yes.
and to the folks at IAAPA who are listening to this, we're putting all our trust and faith of making sure it will be just as seamless of an experience, even with the additional parameters in place of having to leave the building and walk down that pathway and go across the street and go into a whole nother building, of making sure that it doesn't feel too spaced out in what is already, such a large expo. Excited to see the expansion, but also, we're a little
A
nervous
little
of
nervous.
other than
Yeah.
some flow work. Yeah.
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
uh, but excited for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. If there's one last thing that I could share with everybody, is that if you have been thinking about, if you have been considering speaking at IAPA, do it. Apply. Put in your call for presentations. They open in January, so go ahead and put in an idea. I will put this out there for me. If you want to brainstorm ideas, if you want help with the application process, please feel free to reach out. I am happy to help. I want as many new voices as we can every single year, so please go ahead and apply.
And I think they close in February too. So it's
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 pretty
it's
quick.
yeah, it's not a very big window of time. So just to reinforce that message, if you're thinking about doing this, is your window to be thinking
Do
about. On
it.
the plane home, I jotted down some notes of, okay, what are some sessions that I want to think about submitting for next year, and so I'm working on getting those proposals in now. So
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, Josh, this has been a great recap of an amazing week. Like you said, we are already looking forward to 2026. There's a lot of time in between now and then to get even more excited for it, but I cannot wait for the IAAPA Expo 2026.
And in the meantime, for everyone who came to the IAAPA Expo Attraction Pros meetup, thank you so much. We loved seeing you there. For everyone we got to see throughout the week, it's just so great to catch up. To the entire team at IAAPA, we're just so grateful for all that you do, and also grateful for support of the podcast as well. And for everyone out there who is watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.